Sugya of Tolaim. Sugya of Tolaim has a lot of dinim in it. One of the dinim we like to discuss today, Be'ezrat Hashem, is the size of the bug that would be restricted. This is a very good sugya, and we try to learn it and understand what the poskim said about it. So it seems like it's pretty much accepted that anything that you can't see at all with your bare eyes, it's not restricted, it's not asur, it's not prohibited. So if you need to use a microscope or something like that, definitely whatever you see with a microscope will not be prohibited. That's davar pashut, because the Torah was given to bnei adam velo malachim, and at the time of the Torah, it was given, microscopes didn't exist, and obviously when Hashem gave the Torah, He didn't expect us to use a microscope or anything like that. When we're talking about magnifying glass, the poskim say that any magnifying glass that times 10 is considered eyesight already. That's how the Shevet HaLevi brings down. It's accepted, this idea, in many, many places, in stam, in bugs, and in many other places as well. This idea of not looking with things that are more like a microscope and alike is written in various sfarim. It's brought down in the Aruch HaShulchan, and it's brought down in the Chayei Adam. They say that the world is filled with all kind of whatever you want to call it, bacteria, whatever you want to call it, and we constantly swallow them every time we breathe and open our mouth. So obviously that's not something that the Torah forbidden, otherwise we would be swallowing all day things that are asur. You can argue, you can be mitakesh and argue on everything that is being said, or just throw arguments, but this is the halacha pshuta. There's a Gemara in Chulin, Gimel Amud Bet. The Gemara says over there that whatever efshar, kshe'i efshar, which means that you have to breathe, that's efshar, so that's not something that's asur. But whatever efshar, even though it's something that you can't see with the eyes, it should be obligated to remove, even though it's very, very small.
Why wouldn't it obligate a person to wear a mask, for example?
A mask.
You have to wear a mask.
If there's both, why wouldn't the Torah obligate us just like we have to take care of?
And the Torah could obligate us anything, but Hashem didn't say wear a mask. So since He didn't say wear a mask, always sometimes people call me up. So very often they call me up, they ask me something, I tell them it's fine. Most of the answers to questions are it's fine. You should know, 9 out of 10, it's fine, it's mutar. Some people are wise. They ask me, why is it mutar? So I tell them, well, hold on. You tell me why it's asur. If the Torah didn't say that it's asur, why should it be asur? You tell me why it's asur, and then I'll tell you why this isur that you came up with is not really asur. So normally that that ends the conversation. That's it. Go idach zil gmor. That's what it is. So that's unfortunately sometimes it comes from rabbis also. Normally, the wise people are those that not devalabatim, that they accept your answer. Normally it's those that are more learned. But why? Why is it mutar? Why is it mutar? Tell me why it's asur. So over here, the Torah never told us to wear a mask, right? So therefore it's not asur. You can argue another argument that the bacteria are not bugs. They're just not bugs. Bugs have certain dinim, sheretz. The Rishonim learned that sheretz shoretz means that it doesn't have feet, or the feet are very close to the ground, like an ant, for instance. So it looks like rochesh al haaretz. But bacteria are not like that. It's a totally different creature. So it's not what the Torah was osir at all. You can argue that this was true also only at the time of of Chazal, of the Torah. But as time changes and the thing becomes more available and you see, so then you have to advance together with, let's say, the technology or whatever the world advances with. This idea is brought down in Rav Steinbuch in Tshuvot V'Hanagot on Ilchot Tfilin. He says that, there's got to be a ribua of the Beit. So although in the time of Chazal, they didn't check with measuring tools, with caliber, whatever looked to the eyes, if it looked like a ribua, it's good. So he brings down a Mishnah in Para that proves that with time, if it changes and one finds way to improve things, he should go with the advancement of the time. Okay, whatever. But Lemai said everything that I said right now is just an argument that is not true. And the truth is that the poskim seems to agree that almost across the board, some want to say that there's some arguing, but almost across the board, that whatever you don't see with the eyes would be permitted. Now, how small is the bug that would be prohibited? How small? So what's considered that small that you could see? So when I learned the Ilchot Shratzim, Tolaim, I was told that Rabbi Elyashiv said that the Isur is 0.02. And this is this idea of this size of 0.2, not 0.02, 0.2 millimeters is because the size of what the Sfarim call milbin, or in Hebrew akrit, or in English a mite, is that size. It's 0.2. Where do you bring that mite should be asur? Maybe mite should be mutar. The answer is that we found few places in the poskim that something that is that small should be asur. First of all, throughout, all the Sfarim on bugs, they bring those. The Rashba, the Rashi, there's few Sfarim that bring the same, all the Sfarim bring the same proofs. So the Rashba says like this, in Tshuvot, Chelek Aleph, Siman Resh Ein Hei, he says like this, מה שאמרת בפולים החדשים שסמוך לגומן מצוי בהם במקום הרחש מקום שחור, ונקרא ראשו של רחש וגופו אינו ניכר אלא מהפול עצמו, שמשונה קצת מהפול עצמו, אם אסור רחש זה או לא. You have something that is very small and only the head could be ניכר. So he says like this, the Rashba answers, הרחש ההוא מיד נודע מקומו, שמשחיר וכולו נברא וזה קטן מאוד. It's a very very small שרץ, small bug. וכמה פעמים ניסיתי, says the Rashba, I tried it out, I tested out. ונוטלין אותו ממקומו, you pick it up, you put it, ומניחים על ציפורן האצבע, you put it on your fingernails, והוא רוכש והולך, and you see it walking. In other words, the only way you could actually recognize it is by the fact that it's walking. You see something moving. It's so small you wouldn't be able to recognize it. But you see something moving, oh, I see something here. I see something here. And this is really בפירוש Rashi, that's the wannabe medamedis to Rashi, because Rashi in Masechet Eruvin Kafchet says, what's the word sheretz? The meaning of the word sheretz, sheratz. It runs. But that's what Rashi says. לשון שרץ, דבר שהוא גר בארץ ואינו נראה אלא על ידי שירוצו וריחושו מפני קוטנו. You can't recognize it. You look at it, you don't see it. It's so small, you don't recognize it. You don't see it. But when it starts running, you recognize it. So this is the size that we measure. Now, if you take this akrin, this milbin, the akrit, the mite, which is very, very small, you see it moving, you'll be able to recognize it. And any poskim bring ideas like this. I don't want to go in length into that. I want to go into a different sugya, and that is the sugya of, I remember when I learned to check and to find, it's a whole wisdom, it's a whole profession of how to find bugs. You have to adopt the right eye to figure what you're looking at. You could look at something and it's a bug and you don't recognize it until you actually pick it up again and again and again and again until you realize that's how you find, that's what it is, or that's how you find something, or that is a bug and that is a dirt. So you need a certain, you pick a certain chush to be able to classify each thing. So I remember one time I came to the rabbi that taught me, and I told him, that's it. I feel that I graduated. I feel that I'm good now. I know it. So he said, oh yeah? Come. He took out of the freezer strawberries, not regular strawberries, strawberries that he probably froze from a while ago that had something very special in it. And he put them in water, and I mean, I'll show you how to check those things that is very hard to find. You put it in a cloth, in like a very, very fine cloth, and you put it in water and you spill it. There's a whole system of how to do it. I have shiurim, by the way, that show how to do it. And those very special strawberries had mites that not the size of 0.2. They're much smaller than that. And you can't recognize them at all because they're invisible. The only thing that was different about those things, about those mites, were the eyes. So they're so much smaller than the akrit, than the mite we're talking about, that's 0.2. And on top of that, they're invisible. They're mamash invisible. In other words, if...
So where is the issue?
So one minute. So the only thing that maybe you could see is the eyes. That's the only thing. It was very, very... I picked out like maybe 6, 7 of them. I got them, Baruch Hashem. But then the rabbi himself, after I finished, I told him it's done. He was very impressed. I picked a nice amount. Then he came in, and after much looking, he was able to pick another couple. So I don't know if it was called that I failed or I passed. I didn't. You know, you don't get a mark in the end of the day. But that's the story. And the question comes to our table now: do we have to, when the issur of bugs, is it a size that's according to the normal eye, not something that a normal person can pick? Is it a professional eye, or is it somebody that has super eyes? Like this rabbi, he has super eyes. There's no question about it. He sees things but it's one in a generation. It's not like, people, you have to train your eyes, and you have to have such good eyes. You have to train your eyes for years and years and years to pick out things like this much easier than a regular person. So the question comes, what did the Torah restrict? We're talking about Isur Torah. What did Torah restrict? Restricted only whatever a regular person can see. And if you have somebody who has expert eyes, that's not what the Torah prohibited. Or is it somebody more than that? Or is it the Superman that sees whatever everybody else can see? So over here, I like to take you through a few sfarim and discuss this very topic. First, I like to read what the Minchat Asher writes. Minchat Asher, a favorite of Asher Weiss Shlita, which has a very, very special way of writing and presenting Torah. Tremendous posek in Eretz Yisrael. And he was asked this very question. He says, כתבתם בשם אחד הרבנים, in the question, שגם תולעים זהירים מאוד, שניכרים רק למטבי ריאות. Those bugs that only those that are the eyesight is extremely well. ואדם בינוני אינו מבחין בהם כלל. A regular person can't recognize them. You see it. You don't see a bug? I don't see anything. What are you talking about? There's nothing here. Oh, there's a bug right there. There's nothing here. So he says, the person that asked the question, he says that it's אסורים. that כאן לא כתבו האחרונים להקל אלא ביצורים מיקרוסקופיים, שאינם נראים כלל לשום אדם. The poskim said that it's restricted only things that you can see only with a microscope. But anything else should, even though you have only somebody with an expert eyes could see them, it should be asur for everybody. This was the question of that avrech yakar v'mufla to Rabbi Weiss. So,
but at the same time, I think he say that תורה לא ניתנה למלכי השרת. אז התורה לא ניתנה ל-10% שיש להם ראייה
איזה 10%?
5%.
So he answers the following. אך באמת זו טעות גמורה, ואין כל מקום לחומרה זו. You don't have to worry about it. דכל התורה כולה אז לנו בתר אדם בינוני. ולעולם אין אדם צריך לחשוב שם אחרי שילם וסומה הוא, ואחרים רואים ושומעים טוב ממנו. Do you have to worry that somebody is better than you? He says you don't have to. And he brings few proofs. And I like to discuss with you those proofs and see if those proofs work. Right? He's understanding that you go according to the majority of people and not according to the expert eyes. And if only the experts can see it, it's permitted. By the way, I like to tell you, just that you should know, in case that we always have to end the shiur before we finish what we have to say, that Ravaya in his Sefer writes the opposite. He says that if only תולעת אשר אדם בעל ראייה מעולה יכול לגלותה, אף שלאחרים אינה נראית, הרי בכלל התולעים והאסורות. That's what he writes, and he brings over here, from Shlomo Zalman he brings, התורה לא אסרה תולעת שהיא קטנה עד שאין עינו של אדם בעל ראייה הכי טובה יכולה לגלותה. The person with the best eyesight in the world can see it, it's still asur. That's how he wants to bring. We're going to discuss everything now.
Regardless the size?
The size, the eyesight. So
if a supernatural person could see it, it's
yes.
mutter for him?
So he says that it's asur if somebody can, again, Ravai says it's asur, Ravash says it's mutar. Let's see these proofs. The first proof, לגבי מראות דמים אמרו, אין לו לדיין על מה שעיניו רואות, ואין הדיין צריך לחשוש שמא אינו רואה כהוגן ומישהו אחר רואה טוב ממנו. You see המראה. The Dayan sees a mar'eh. So he says, oops, everything here looks fine. You don't have to worry, he says, that maybe there's somebody with a better eyesight that can see some. Good proof? So in my understanding, that's not a proof at all. Why not? Why not? Because we're talking about a case with the bugs that somebody else sees something. I have over here something that the professional says there's a bug, and I can't see it. So then we know there's a bug here. He sees it. I don't. Over here, the question is, do we go according to his eyesight or mine? If the case over here would be that I have a mar'eh, that I don't see the red in it, but somebody else says, oh, wait a minute, I see it. There's something here. You don't see it? I say, no. So that would be a proof. Over here, it's not. That's not the case. The case over here is that I see a mar'eh. I don't see anything. I don't have to worry, he says, that somebody else might see. That's not our discussion. Our discussion is that we know as a fact that somebody else sees it. A professional does see the bug. Not that if I look at a fruit and I don't see a bug, it's mutar. Of course it's mutar. The question is, I don't see the bug and somebody else does see the bug. So who do we go like?
Because you always have to come up to like
you don't have to worry about anything if you don't see. The question is, our discussion is very clear. When you see a bug, when a professional sees a bug and I don't, who do we go like? His eyes or my eyes? But over here is a mar'eh that I don't see anything, and there's nobody else that sees. So it's nobody else that sees. Of course I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry. אחזוקי איסורה לא מחזיקינן. אחזוקי איסורה, we have a rule. אחזוקי איסורה לא מחזיקינן. If I don't see a problem, I told you, there's some people that constantly would tell them it's mutar. They tell you, Rabbi, can you find me a isur? Find me a isur, why is it mutar? The answer is, you sure, Rabbi? There's many people, you tell them it's mutar. But, so you're saying they keep on asking, they keep on nagging, maybe after it's asur. No, it's mutar, it's mutar. Achzuki, isura, lo machzikinan, you don't have to worry. That's not our discussion at all. Our discussion here is that we know there's a bug. Somebody else sees it. We go according to whose eyes? That's the first raya. Second raya that he brings. Second raya, we're talking about the size. What is the size? That's asur. Second raya, בתערובות איסור בהיתר אמרו חז"ל סמכין על נטעימת כפילה. Whenever you have something that isur fell in the dish. So what do? How do we find out if it's asur? You give it to a kfela, you give it to a professional, to a chef. You give it to a chef, taste it, tell me, what do you feel here? And he tells you, well, I feel over here a little bit, it has that special spice of the bacon that we ate at my mother's house every holiday. So then you know it's asur. So lemaise, the Shulchan Aruch says that even regular people taste would be sufficient. And you don't need to ask a kfeila. Again, that's not a proof, because we're not dealing in a case that you asked the kfeila, you asked the professional, you asked the chef, and he told you there's a taste, and then the other people tell you, I don't feel it. That's not the question. The question is, when you ask regular people, if they don't feel it, that's sufficient. You don't have to worry, maybe there's a taste here. Moreover, he brings the Rashba as a proof, and it's emphasized over here in the Sefer, and he says, Lashon HaRashba b'Torat HaBeit, lo ba kfela klal, you don't have to ask a kfela at all, a professional, a chef, אלא כל טעם שאינו נרגש לכל התואמים, אינו טעם ואין חוששים לו. If everybody that tasted don't feel it, that's sufficient. You don't have to worry about it. That's exactly what we're saying. It's not like you gave it to a kfela, he says, I feel it, and others say you don't feel it, and now if you would say that you go according to the rest and not with the chef, that would be maybe a proof. But that's not what we're saying. We're saying he gave it to taste to everybody. You don't have to worry more than that. That's enough. That's sufficient. That's not our case at all. At all. Next.
Is the Rashba saying that it has to be the taste has to be so much that everybody should taste it? Is that what he's saying?
He says, כל טעם שאינו נרגש לכל התואמים.
היינו שכל אחד צריך להרגיש את זה. So even
לא.
if half taste,
לא.
it's still not done.
לא. כל התואמים לא מרגישים. אף אחד לא אומר פה שיש פה טעם. הכל בסדר, אני נותן לכולכם, I give everybody to taste.
אבל שף גם מרגיש.
לא, זה מה שאנחנו אומרים, אין פה שף. That's what we're saying, there's no chef. If there would be a chef, קח לשף, אבל אין שף. לא לקחת, זה הוא אומר, לא צריך לדאוג. נכון, 100%. אם באמת אין לך מומחה, אז הכל בסדר. השאלה שלנו אם יש מומחה.
אז גם פה אם יש טבח.
כבוד הרב.
I think that's what he's saying. I was thinking the same thing. All these rayas that Rebbe is saying is not a raya. It is a raya because he's saying that his case is that if I happen to found this because I'm a mumcha, I find this Torah, this bug, that's this mite, that it's aser, but everybody else won't. Who do we go with? So same thing. He's saying that you punkt happen to have found it. So therefore, you want to know now: is it mutter? Does everybody else have to be chayshish for you or not?
We're saying that as long as you don't find something, you don't have to be choishish. Our question is, when the question was, when you yourself don't see something, and the professional, the one with the very good eyesight, sees it. Who do we go? We go, is it mutar or is it asur? That is the question. So he wants to say, we don't go according to the professional. We don't go according to the one that has excellent eyesight. We go according to normal people. That is the standard. And the rayas are not rayas because we don't have somebody in contrast saying there's something asur over here. We don't have that. Everybody's saying it's mutar. You don't have to worry more than that. That's it. You don't have to worry more than that.
You don't have to go after the guy.
Because we have a rule that the chzuk, what's the lashon? En chosheshim lo. You don't have to worry more than that because chzuk is isur lo machzikinan. You don't have to be choshesh. It doesn't say that it doesn't exist. It says the Torah doesn't ask you to go and beyond. If people don't feel it, it's good enough. There's nothing here. You don't have to worry about it. That's good enough for the Torah. Torah is not sealing every isur 100%. It's not like 100% thing. As long as we have rov and we have chazaka and we have sfekot, we have a lot of mistabruyot. That's good enough for the Torah. We don't.
Once he's there and he sees, that's it. It's done.
If you would say, if there would be somebody there, a professional, and would taste it and would say, "Whoa, a minute, I do feel the bacon here. What do you mean you don't feel it? I do feel." So then maybe it would be different. Then it would be different. Maybe it would be different. Next, proof number 3. כיוצא בדבר מצינו בהלכות שחיטה. Listen to this. הלכות שחיטה, כבוד הרב. בפתחי תשובה יורדי הסימן י"ח שהביא מהשלה שהיה חסיד אחד שלא אכל בשר. There was one חסיד that didn't eat any meat. כי ראה, why not? Why he didn't eat meat? כי ראה שוחט שבדק השקית ומצאו כשר. He saw a certain שוחט that checked it and he said kosher. He checked the knife, the bodek checked the knife, all kosher. ואותו חסיד שב ובדק את הסכין ומצא בו פגימה. The Hasid went, he checked, he says, 1 minute, I do feel, I'm not eating this meat. ושוב הביא בשם שו"ת בית יעקב סימן צדיק א', שכתב שאין זו אלא מידת חסידות. ולא היה לו להחמיר בזה אלא בימות החול ולא בשבת ויום טוב. So you see from here that what? That this Hasid was מחמיר בתורת חסידות. Really, in reality, he didn't need to be מחמיר. Which means we go according to the first shochet and bodek that checked the sakin with a normal feeling and he didn't feel anything. This Hasid had extra feelings, he was extra sensitive and he felt, we don't go according to him. Good proof, that's already, we have a contrast between two. Beit Yaakov, shoot Beit Yaakov. הפתחי תשובה מביא את השלה, והוא עצמו מביא את הבית יעקב. בואו נראה את הדברים בפנים.
Two same caliber, meaning two same levels. Would that affect it?
Two same calibers means?
Same shot, right? Nobody's more expert than the other one. One finds, one doesn't.
Oh, okay, that's a different question. That's a different question. But we're saying over here, there's one that was a little bit. Let's see the Pitchei Tshuva inside. The Darkei Tshuva, he brings over here, Pitchei Tshuva. Right. Let's see the Pitchei Tshuva inside. Pitchei Tshuva, יורה דעה, סימן י"ח, סעיף קטן ט'. I'm reading you inside. עיין, לאט לאט, אנחנו עובדים לאט לאט, כמה זמן שיש לנו. עיין שלה, שכתב שראה חסיד אחד שלא אכל בשר שחוטה משום שראה בחוש המישוש שהסכין פגומה, והשוחט לא הרגיש בזה. Exactly our story. ועיין עוד בתשובת בית יעקב, שכתב שמדין האין צריך להחמיר, בזה אלא מידת חסידות יש להחמיר בכל ולא בשבת ויום טוב, דמבטל מצווה אם אינו אוכל בשר. So according to the בית יעקב, לכאורה there's a proof. But the פתחי תשובה himself says, ואין דבריו מוכרחים, עיין בורחיים. So first of all, the פתחי תשובה himself argues. So למעשה he says that it's not true, you have to be מחמיר. אין דבריו מוכרחים. It's not true his conclusion, the conclusion of the בית יעקב. Not true. But when you want to look inside, let's see how the Darkei Tshuva brings down this idea. We'll see in a second. So we have over here the psak of the Pitchei Tshuva that en dvarav muchachim. That's not the psak. So the Ma'aseh we have a psak not like that from the Pitchei Tshuva, not like the Beit Yaakov. Okay. Next, Shulchan Aruch Harav Resh Yoreh De'ah Kuntres Acharon Siman Katan Gimel. I brought over here. כתב, אם השוחט בדק כדין הסכין, כדין הסכין כשר. He checks and he sees that the סכין is good, it's kosher. ואף אם יבוא אחר וימצא פגימה, even afterwards somebody would come and feel there's a פגימה, our case. על כוח אכן זו פגימה הפוסלת. The second one that felt better than the first is not able to passel the first one. דאם לא כן נתת כל אחד תורת כל אחד בידו. ואין אומרים שבדיקת הסכין דורשת אומנות, אלא כל אחד ואחד נאמן על השחיטה. That's what he wants to say, אין שם דבריו ובירים. Which means he brings another proof again to his idea, that the feeling of a normal person is sufficient. And you don't need to go for the feeling of the professional, of the more sensitive person. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch Harav inside, in Kuntres Acharon, Hilchot Shchita, Aleph Gimel. He says like this. He says, listen to the words. Listen if the words of the Shulchan Aruch Harav fit the way that Kvod Harav Minchat Asher brings down. He says like this. מי שבודק הסכין בכוונת הלב, you put your heart into it. You do it precisely, you do it with כוונה. ואינו מרגיש כלום. You didn't feel anything, it's kosher. אף מי שמרגיש אחריו, even if somebody else would come afterwards and feel it, בוודאי שאינו מרגיש פגימה אוסרת מדינה. He doesn't feel something that asses. שהיינו שאוגרת כלשהו, אפילו חוט השערה. Because that is not something that is enough to be אוגרת כלשהו, that able to stop something from going through, like for instance, a hair. You put a hair through, would it delay it from going forward? You wouldn't do that. אבל אינה אוגרת שום דבר, היינו דמיה לסעסעה ואינה פגימה כדלקמן סימן י"ח. וזה שבדק כהלכה, the first person that checked correctly ולא מצא כלום, על כוכך צריך לומר, שזה שמצא אחריו לא מצא פגימה אוסרת. The second person, we agree, you felt something, but that's not enough to answer. אינה פגימה אוסרת מדינה, כי אי אפשר שתמצא פגימה אוסרת מדינה אחר בדיקה ראויה כהלכתה. Once a person checked correctly, he says, the second person felt, we agree you felt, but it's not something that has the shiur. Everything in Torah has shiur. What you have, but the ergesh of the person is not enough to answer because the isur, the ergesh is something that should have ogeret something, block something, stop something from going through, like a hair, you go through the knife. What he felt was extra sensitivity that's not under the category of isur in the knife. So therefore, this raya is not a raya at all. We're not saying that there's something isur over here. The question is, who do we go like? We know we go like isur that has to be oger, and you have to feel it. The first person checked. If he checked and he was fine, and he checked correctly, we're saying, and then somebody more sensitive felt it. Very nice that you felt it. We're not saying that you didn't, but what you felt is not the isur. That's not something that asses. You understand the simple chiluk? So therefore, that is a
good raya, because that's saying that if we're saying
if the raya would be, I'll explain. If the proof that we need to find is that any feeling would make the sakin asur, then you're right. This would make the second person felt something. So we should go like him. But
see a bug, you're gonna say
1 minute. But the isur in a knife is not any feeling that you have. It needs to be ogeret. It needs to block something you take through. So if there's something more than that, if there's something less than that, there is some kind of feeling, but it's less than that. That's not bichlal isur. So the second person that was extra sensitive, that's not bichlal isur. But when we're talking about bugs, the question we have to deal with, which bugs did the Torah answer? The Torah answered a bug that is according to the feeling of the person, to the eyesight of a person. Is it to the eyesight of a regular person or a very good sensitive eye that's an expert? Over here, all these proofs, I'm just saying, he wants to say that it's the regular people. Could be, but all these proofs that he brought here are not such. Next proof, I want to go through everything. The final proof that he brings is chila. Schila poselet. In a mikveh, schila poselet. But it needs to be schila nikeret, as it says in ההלכה. וכבר העריכו כל הפוסקים בתשובותיהם בעניין זה, והסכמת כולם, שכל שלא רואים זחילה, if you don't see it, you don't feel it, you don't see anything, אף שיודעים אנו בבירור שיש זחילה מסוימת, אין זחילה הזו פוסלת. Even though you know for sure, let's say after a while you saw there's water missing here, you have machinery that can sense it. It's not זחילה פוסלת. gewaldig. That's not zchila posel because you can't see it. There's no professional that can see it. There's no somebody that tells you I see it. And therefore, the question is, should we go like the better person that could see it, or the majority of people that don't see it? We don't have a better person. We know that's not good enough. You need to have somebody seeing. If you know, but the fact of, let's say, results that you check afterwards and you see something have changed over here with time, that's definitely not bichlal schila oseret. You need to have, the question is, if you have right now somebody that's actually feeling and seeing it, then that would be maybe a raya. Now, who says the opposite from Rav?
Can I just, one, I think what he means by all this is that a lot of things that are based on metzias, they only base on something that can be checked by normal people. Okay, not by special people.
Correct.
The same thing with bugs. That's what I mean.
Correct.
It's not,
But even in bugs, he himself would agree that in bugs, we all agree that if you check and you don't find anything, it's permitted. The question is, what happens if there is somebody that does find it? As long as there's nobody that finds it and you did an excellent job checking, you know how to check, there's no question.
The knife and the skill
The
are the
knife,
same.
the blood, the mikveh, it's all the shiurim were based on what you should see, what normal person should see. All the shiurim, and maybe with bugs also. So it wasn't by somebody special. The reason why the knife has to have gima, that it's ma'akevet, it's only because.
I'll read you again the question. Only because
only something like this can be found by everybody.
Who else understand? Who else? I see it as usually they say that if the talmidim, if the listening, if the crowd doesn't understand, it's a lack in the hesber. They say in Yiddish that a lack in hasbara is a lack in Havana, right?
Lack of understanding Yiddish, I think.
I mean, if you start with the yesod that any bug is asur, okay? If you start with the yesod, any bug.
Let's see the question. הנה כתבתי בשם אחד הרבנים וגם תולעים זהירים מאוד שניכרים רק למטיבי ריאות. They are visible to those. There's a bug here that you have people that are experts that saw it. ואדם בינוני אינו מבחין בהם כלל אסורים. Is that, do we go like that person that recognized it? Although everybody else don't see anything? Or we say no, that your eyes are Superman's eyes, and we don't pay attention. We don't need.
By Tahan we don't do it.
Yeah,
That's
very
all
good.
there is.
every
We
time.
don't do it. Every time that it's
יש שם מומחה פה,
נוגע
טבח, תביא
לדעת
טבח
אדם,
שאיתה, תביא את זה שזה.
you get the regular one. You don't have to get the מומחה.
So, זהו, סיימת שבח הדמרח. So all the rayot that he brought, not all, we saw that there's a couple of ways to disprove, to slug it up, as they say in Lashon HaKodesh, are different. But some of the rayot he brought down was that you have something in front of you that looks fine. You have to worry that maybe there's an expert that would say differently. That's not the question. Of course, you don't have to worry. There's no question that if you have something clean in front of you, or something, a knife that you checked and everything's fine, and nobody checks after you, and you are a bodek, sakin, that is fine. That's not a question. Lo chashinan. The Torah doesn't ask you to do more than the requirement. The Torah relies on rov. The Torah relies on chazakah. The Torah relies on professionalism. If you are a bodek, that's good enough. If you know how to check for bugs and you checked your letters, it's good enough. The question here is what happens if after you check the letters, the person at the seder opens up the letters and says, whoops, what? You check the letters? What kind of mashgiach are you? Don't see? No, I don't see anything. What are you talking about? Tells you there's something here. So now, do you go like him? I want to take you to Rav Vaya that says the opposite. Rav Vaya, Shlita, says the following. He brings few proofs to prove that תולעת אשר אדם בעל ראייה מעולה יכול לגלותה. A professional with a specialized can see it, אף שלאחרים אינה נראית. Everybody else can see it. It's אסור, he says. הרי בכלל תולעים האסורות. תולעים האסורות. He brings down, over here, few proofs. Let's see the proofs. I want to take you to the ones that are easier to slug up. He brings, for instance, חתם סופר. I read you the לשון. אך רגיל אני לדרוש בשבת הגדול, says the חתם סופר. מי שאין לו אנשים מיוחדים מסוימים בעלי יראה. If you don't have special people that are יראי שמיים, הבודקים ומנקים אותו מרחש תולעים קטנים הנמצאים מאוד מאוד בימי הפסח, that are very common in פסח, ואינם ניכרים לחלושי הראות, and people with weak eyesight can't see, על כוכך מי שאין לו בביתו מי שיבדקנו כראוי, טוב לקח הטמחה שקוראים חרין. Take the חרין. So now, no, not tov. He said that it needs to be, as long as it's not nikar lebal chalushe reut. He says the opposite. If anything, he says the opposite. Regular eyesight is sufficient, is good enough. If you have somebody with weak eyes, why weak eyes? Because all day you're learning and your eyes, glasses became this thick. and you lost your 20/20 vision. So therefore, don't eat the lettuce, eat the chrein, or whatever, right? But if anything, the proof is pun verkehrt, as they say in English. Yeah, lehefech. That's in Yiddish. I'm trying to get away from Yiddish. Okay, next. He brings three proofs. The first proof. ספר דבר שאול ויוסף דעת, כתב, באדם שחוש הראות שלו חזק, person with a good eyesight, שגם אם היה תולעת קטנה רואה אותה, אבל בלאו הכי אין להקל. Without that, you don't need to be מקל. And let's see the Yosef Da'at that's brought down in the Darkei Tshuva. The Darkei Tshuva brings down the following, I'm reading you. דברי שאול ויוסף דעת, רש סימן זה, הקשה על דעת השח, it says over here that you can't fill up the cup with water from the river and drink. Why? Because you took out the bugs together with it. They're not anymore sheretz ha-shoretz b'mayim. They're not anymore in the water. They're in the cup, and you're not allowed to drink it like that. He asks, this Sefer Divrei Shaul, Yosef Da'at, on Pasuk in Shoftim, Vayored ha'am el hamayim, the nation went to the water, Vayi mispar ha'melakekim be'adam al piyem. They took in the water in the hand and they started licking. Echshari, how they do that? How did he allow them to do such a thing? There's bugs in the and once you pick it up, they came out of the water. כתב שצריך לומר שראו בידיים שלא היה שם תולעים. Answer is, they looked, they saw, they didn't see the bugs. מועבר מזה, שאפילו בשותה מים מנהר שמוחזק בתולעים בידו או בכלי, אם רואים במים שבידו או בכלי, אין בו שום תולע, מותר לשותו בלא סינון. As long as you see that there's no bugs, it's permitted. אך זה פשוט לפי עניות דעתי שאין כל המקומות שווים. Not every place will be the same. Oh, and now listen to these words, ואין כל אדם שווה בזה. דווקא אם לא יחזקו שם תולעים קטנים, only if you know that there's no bugs there, you can do that. If there's bugs there, it's more problematic. או על כל פנים באדם שחוש הראות שלו חזק. Or you have somebody that can see well. שגם אם היה תולע קטנה, היה רואה אותה. If there would be a small bug, he would see it. אבל בלאו הכי אין להקל. What are we talking about over here? Somebody that sees better than the entire world? Somebody that has a 20/20 vision, ראות חזק. It's not talking about ראות שלו חזק, 20/20, good eyesight. That's all we're talking about. The proof is that the entire nation, what, you had to have a professional over here that works in the best hashgacha on tolaim. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody that has a good eyesight. Most of the people, before they lose the eyesight, is ראות חזק. That's it. ראות שלו is חזק. Otherwise, the entire nation, how they drank. How they drank. That's simple. So therefore, that's also not a proof. Next. So again, I'm saying over here, there's no proofs on the opposite to say that you need to have a very good eyesight. וכן כתב רב שלמה זלמן אוירבך, התורה, now, רב שלמה זלמן אוירבך, he brings in הליכות שדה. I don't know where to find הליכות שדה, so I looked at the אוצר החוכמה and I found it, ברוך השם, הליכות שדה. There's such a thing. They have over there hundreds of different volumes. It seems like they are our מתחרים, how do you say, competition with our newsletter. So they have already over here Gilyon 51. They write from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. After they write and they prove that you don't need to have the best eyesight or whatever, they don't prove it, but that's what come out. Then they say, התורה לא אסרה תולעת שהיא קטנה עד שאין עינו של אדם בעל ראייה הכי טובה יכולה לגלותה. So there's two things here. First of all, what does he say? Let's see first what he says. Rav Shlomo, if they bring in the name of Rav Shlomo Zalman, התורה לא אסרה תולעת שהיא קטנה. Torah didn't answer such a bug that is so small, עד שאין עינו של אדם בעל ראייה הכי טובה יכולה לגלותה. It doesn't answer, the Torah doesn't answer something that the best person with the best eyesight couldn't find it. And no, couldn't, even the best person in the world couldn't find it, that's not asur. So you see that if the best person with the best eyesight could see it, it's asur. Mashma midvarav, diuk pashut midvarav, it comes out from his words, that if you have such a person with the best eyesight that could see it, it's asur. What's the problem with this? First of all, he doesn't say that this conclusion. He doesn't say this diuk. He just tells you that Torah didn't answer because you have to put in things in context of what he spoke. Maybe he spoke about what's asur. He says for sure that's not asur. For sure something that even the best eyesight can see is not asur. That's for sure not asur. Would it be asur if he could see it? Weiß nicht. That's first of all. Secondly, where is this Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach? I mean, they don't bring a source. Did they hear it from him in his mouth? They don't bring a source of where it's written. There are tshuvot from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that he speaks about the size of the bug, and he doesn't mention such a thing. He just says that anything from a microscope, as we spoke before, from all the poskim, that's not asur. But if there would be such a chidush, he should have wrote it. Why it's not written anywhere? Anyway, this thing over here, everything we're saying over here is not really, something you can take home and say, there's proofs here, solid proofs, a Rashba like we saw before, Rashi like we saw before, some solid proofs. But guess what? Shevet HaLevi. Shevet HaLevi speaks about such a thing, nekuda ktana ad me'od, b'mareh shachor, you have a small dot, that's a bug, asur, it's not asur. He brings over here from and I wrote it here also. I brought it here from the Pitrei Tshuva. He brings down here. בשאלת יעבץ, השיב, חלילה לסמוך על זה, דבדיקה לא שייך רק במה שאפשר הבדיקה לכל אדם, אבל במה שאי אפשר רק בדרך החוק, על ידי כלי זו לא נחשב בדיקה לסמוך על זה. Which means it needs to be, the bdika has to be על ידי כל אדם. This is what he brings from the Yavetz. Now the way he brings it down over here, the Shevet HaLevi, he says the words like this. הובא גם כן בדרכי תשובה, דבדיקה לא שייך אלא במה שנראה לרוב בני אדם. אבל לא על ידי זכוכית מגדלת. I think it's correct because the Yavetz says לכל אדם. It's not possible to say לכל אדם that everybody can see it. Everybody has different eyesight. So I think the way he fixes it, the Shevet HaLevi is correct. He's average person, majority of people, whatever they can see. So over here you have a Yavetz. You have a Yavetz, and it's dvarim mistabrim, just like Rav Asher Weiss. But again, all these proofs, I'm just saying on these proofs, he's a giant. I'm not saying if he would be here, he would swallow us and tell us that his proofs are correct and we are talking shtuyot. There's no question about that. But again, I know nothing. I'm just trying to put things together here. It doesn't sound like all the proofs of either work in any possible way. You have over here a Shevet HaLevi that's dvarim hamistabrim. He bases it on a Yavetz. A Yavetz is the Yavetz. So therefore, Lemaisi comes out like this, in my humble understanding that... Oh, by the way, I'd like to mention another thing. Once we're already going to wrap it up, we have another 3-4 minutes. We have the Rav Zalman Revach, Shneor Zalman Revach, that wrote a lot of Sfarim on bugs. He's a mumche also in bugs, just like Avaya is one of the leaders in bugs. And he brings over here, Acharakim Asurim, in the Klalim, just like Avaya has Klalim, he says, Acharakim Asurim, הם אפילו אותם שאינם נראים אלא לאחר התבוננות, אפילו אינם נראים אלא בשמש בפפה. כל שיש אדם שראייתו טובה, you have a person that has very good eyesight, ורואה חרק זה, הרי זה אסור, גם לאותם שראייתם חלשה ואינם מבחינים בזה. Now, could be means just a regular person with a good eyesight, which is correct. But if it speaks about somebody with a very, very good eyesight, as Avaya wants to say, so therefore I try to see what's his proof. And down on the bottom, I go through the whole proof. It's mamash. There's nothing here that it's saying. Nothing. He brings the Rashba that we saw before, that if it's a bug that could be seen while it's moving, it's not talking about somebody with a very good eyesight. That's what he brings here. And then he brings other things also, but nothing that he brings the ideas from the... by the way, he brings of Shlomo Zalman. מה שענה תשובה לשאלה מאמריקה, אם יש להקל בענייני הירקות המוחזקים בנגיעות, סוף שלמה זלמן says, ומעתה, אף אגב דבריאה גם בדיעבד לא בטיל, מכל מקום אפשר שכאי גבנה שאינם נראים כלל לעיניים רק גם כנגד השמש, אף אגב ששפיר מסתבר שלעיניים דאורה אבי בריאה, ואוכלת אולי כזו אסור, כי אין זה דומה כלל לשרצים שדרים על ידי מיקרוסקופ, and so on and so forth, which means you need to see something, you need to be able to see it with your eyesight, and you can't see it with your eyesight, so therefore, but again, it's not, if he's talking about Rayatot Tova, I understand, simple. So that I understand. Average eye, 20/20 eye, that's what you need, a 20/20 eye. So it's not like Rav Vaya wants to say, it is like Rav Asher Weiss wanted to say, but not כדינה ולא מטעמה.
אבל גם רב ויה מסכים על גודל מסוים. לא.
כן, הוא מסכים על גודל מקובל, שזה 0.2.
אז זה הולך נגד, זאת
אומרת, יש סתירה בדבריו.
לא סתירה בדבריו, נשמע מדבריו שגם הוא יסכים עם כולם.
לא, אבל הוא תשמע את הלשון פה.
שמעתי את הלשון, צריך להסתכל על כל הדבר בכללות.
תולד אשר אדם בעל ראייה מעולה. Let's say it's 2020. Let's say 2020. But then he brings up Shom Azam and it says, עד שאין עינו של אדם בעל ראייה הכי טובה יכולה, יכול להיות שהכי טובה הכוונה זה 2020, הכי טובה שאתה יכול להגיע, יכול להיות שאין סתירה, יכול להיות שהכל בסדר, יכול להיות שאתה מיישב את הדברים נכון, הכי טובה זה הכוונה הכי טובה שאתה יכול להגיע שזה 2020, בעל ראייה מעולה זה 2020, יכול להיות, אני מסכים, ככה הכל מתיישב ובעל מקומו בשלום, וכל השיעור שלנו אפשר חזק ברוך, thanks for listening.